It's a big one. I think they got way too many awards and second chance opportunities, even just like getting it and spraying it out for open threes. And I think that like we're making the extra efforts to.
In the quiet refuge of the Clark family kitchen in West Des Moines, Iowa, with the late afternoon sun pouring through the windows and scattering golden patterns across the worn wooden table that had held the weight of countless meals, countless arguments, countless laughter-filled evenings and quiet mornings, 16-year-old Caitlin Clark sat across from her mother, and, her hands trembling, her cheeks streaked with tears, her body folded into itself as if to shield her heart from the vulnerability of what she had just whispered into the stillness of the room. Those three words that hung in the air like a prayer, fragile and piercing, trembling yet unignorable. Am I good enough? And though the room was familiar, the ticking grandfather clock in the hallway, the faint smell of coffee lingering in the air, the photographs of family holidays and youth sports pinned on the fridge. In that moment, the space transformed into something larger than a kitchen. It became a sanctuary, an arena of truth where a daughter exposed the core of her doubt and a mother carried the weight of knowing she must respond not just as a parent, but as a witness, as a guardian of her child's sense of worth. And Clark, who had lived her own life in the shadow of athletics, the daughter of legendary coach Bob Nitze and a woman who understood better than most that sports were never simply about points, scores, or trophies, but about character, resilience, and the slow forging of identity in the crucible of competition, felt her own heart fracture as she watched her daughter's shoulders shake under the burden of invisible fears. And in Caitlin's voice, she heard not just a teenager's insecurity, but the universal cry of every human who has ever stared into the mirror of expectation and wondered whether they were enough, whether they could measure up, whether they belonged in the company of greatness. Caitlin had just returned from an AAU tournament that, on paper, should have been nothing short of triumphant. She had poured in 32 points, delivered 11 assists with a vision that left scouts scribbling furiously in their notebooks, and had led her team to victory against some of the most formidable young players in the nation. A performance that would have satisfied any observer, any coach, any recruiter. Yet as the final buzzer had sounded and applause filled the gym, Caitlin's gaze had shifted not to the cheers but to the faces of the scouts, and in their eyes, or perhaps only in the harsh mirror of her own perception, she thought she saw judgment, doubt, comparison to others who appeared taller, stronger, more athletic, more physically imposing. And on the silent drive home, her mother's eyes on the road, Caitlin's words had spilled out in barely audible confession. The other girls are stronger than me, more athletic. I saw how the scouts looked at them. I saw their faces when I missed those 2 free throws in the fourth quarter. And though and knew the truth, that missing 2 free throws does not erase brilliance, that comparison is the thief of joy, that Caitlin's gift was unique and extraordinary. She also knew that telling her daughter these truths would not be enough, because the wound of doubt can only truly be healed by a revelation that reaches beyond reassurance, by a story that connects the present pain to a larger arc of meaning. So now, seated across the same wooden table where and had once taught Caitlin to stir cookie dough, where birthdays had been celebrated and family losses grieved, and steadied herself, gripping the table edge to anchor her body against the wave of emotion rising within her, and she looked into her daughter's eyes wide and desperate, eyes that contained both the innocence of a child and the restless yearning of an athlete on the verge of discovering her destiny. And she made a choice. For years she had carried a secret, tucked deep within her chest, a story she had guarded even from her husband, Dell, and from the coaches and friends who filled their lives with chatter about basketball futures. She had carried it like a sacred seed, waiting for the right moment to plant it in her daughter's heart, knowing that if she revealed it too soon it might inflate pride rather than fortify resilience. But if revealed at the right time, it might become the foundation stone upon which Caitlin could rebuild her confidence and carry herself into the next phase of her journey. The moment had arrived, and reached across the table, her hands enfolding Caitlin's, feeling the rough calluses that spoke of hours spent dribbling and shooting, the faint tremor that betrayed how fragile her courage was in this moment. And with steady voice she said, "Caitlin, I need to tell you something I've never told anyone. Something I've been saving for the moment when you needed it most." The room seemed to hold its breath. The grandfather clocks ticked stretching into eternity, the sunlight casting its glow on mother and daughter as if sanctifying the scene. And began her story, when Caitlin was only 12 years old, barely stepping into adolescence. she had received a phone call that had altered the way she saw her daughter's future. It was not from a neighbor, nor a local coach, but from Gino Arima, the legendary head coach of the University of Connecticut. The man whose name carried the weight of dynasty in women's basketball, the architect of championships, the mentor of icons like Diana Taurasi, Sue Bird, and Maya Moore. He had seen video footage of Caitlin playing in a summer league and had been so struck, so startled, that he bypassed the usual channels and called indirectly, a gesture rare and intimate. And on that call, he had told her something that she had never forgotten. Something she had carried like a candle in the dark, waiting for the moment her daughter's doubt demanded light. Gino had said that in 30 years of coaching, he had never seen a 12-year-old with Caitlin's basketball intelligence. Not her shooting, not her dribbling, not her speed, but her mind, her vision, her uncanny ability to read the court 3 plays ahead of everyone else. A gift that could not be taught or mimicked, a gift that came once in a generation. He told in that Caitlin did not simply play basketball. She spoke it, as if it were her first language, as if the rhythm of passes and cuts, the geometry of movement, the pulse of momentum were written into her very soul, and that one day she would not merely participate in the game, she would redefine how it was understood. She would teach the world new ways of seeing and playing. As Anne recounted these words, tears finally broke free, not of sorrow but of release, of carrying too long the knowledge that her daughter had been recognized as extraordinary long before she herself could believe it, and Caitlin, stunned, stared at her mother, the words reverberating in her mind. Her tears slowing not because her doubt was gone, but because something inside her had shifted, some ancient hunger to be seen, to be validated, had been fed in a way she had not expected. "Why didn't you ever tell me this before?" she asked, her voice trembling, and, smiling through her tears, reached to brush a strand of hair from her daughter's damp face and replied with a truth that cut deeper than any reassurance could. "Because I wanted you to discover your own strength first. I wanted you to wrestle with your doubts, to fight for your belief, because it is the fight, not the praise, that shapes a leader, that makes not just a great player but a great human being." And after a pause, she revealed more. Over the years there had been other calls from Stanford, from Notre Dame, from Tennessee, voices from every corner of the basketball world saying the same thing in their own words. That Caitlin had something beyond statistics, beyond drills, something unmeasurable, the rare ability to elevate everyone around her, to transform ordinary possessions into moments of magic, to see possibilities invisible to others, to bend the geometry of the game with vision and creativity. In that golden kitchen light, the revelation washed over Caitlin like a baptism of truth, dissolving the fragile walls of doubt, replacing them with something sturdier, something that would not eliminate fear, for fear always lingers, but would allow her to stand beside it without being consumed. She understood then that greatness was not a matter of being stronger or taller than the others, but of seeing the unseen, of carrying a vision that others could not yet comprehend, of daring to trust the gift that had been planted within her. And as Anne held her daughter's hands, she too felt a shift, realizing that in speaking this secret aloud, she had given Caitlin not just a shield against doubt, but a map for her future. A reminder that every tear shed in kitchens and cars, every whispered fear of inadequacy,
that the goal of the game tonight was just try to go inside out, inside first, then out.
2. Your turn.
The afternoon sun had shifted in the Clark family kitchen, its golden rays softening into longer, deeper shadows that stretched across the wooden floorboards as if nature itself were aware of the quiet transformation taking place within those 4 walls. For in that shifting light, something equally profound shifted between mother and daughter, something that would extend far beyond the realm of sport and touch upon the very essence of identity, purpose, and the delicate truths we often struggle to see in ourselves until someone who loves us enough holds up a mirror that reflects not only our strengths but also our hidden fears. And on that March afternoon in 2018, 16-year-old Caitlin Clark found herself caught in precisely such a moment, seated across from her mother and at the worn kitchen table where countless family meals, homework sessions, and quiet conversations had taken place, her cheeks streaked with tears as she whispered words that seemed to come from the very marrow of her being. "Am I good enough?" A question so piercing, so raw, so painfully human that it hung in the air like a prayer waiting to be answered. And in that silence, Anne felt both the weight of her daughter's vulnerability and the responsibility to finally reveal truths she had carried close to her heart for years. truths that had remained hidden not because she doubted Caitlin, but because she had known instinctively that some revelations must wait until the soul is prepared to hear them. And so, as Caitlin wept with it, fear of being an imposter in the very game that had already begun to define her, and steadied herself and reached for the wisdom every mother hopes to provide at exactly the right time, reminding her daughter gently that confidence which comes only from external praise is fragile, easily broken by a missed shot or a harsh word, but confidence born from within, forged through honesty and self-discovery, is unshakable, enduring, and capable of carrying her through storms. Far greater than a difficult match. Caitlin's tears shifted then, no longer the tears of despair but of release, of recognition, as though for the first time she truly understood that the quiet, relentless whisper inside her head, the one that said she was pretending, that she would let people down, that she was somehow less than the girls she competed against, had never been her own authentic voice but rather the echo of fear, of comparison, of external pressure masquerading as truth. And when she admitted to and that she was, terrified people would one day discover she was not as good as they thought, and rose from her chair, walked around the table, and pulled her daughter into an embrace so complete, so enveloping, that words became secondary, for a mother's arms can hold entire worlds, and in that embrace Caitlin felt both safe and seen. Caitlin Elizabeth Clark, and whispered, her voice trembling yet steady with conviction, "You are not just good enough, you are extraordinary. Not because of what you can do with a basketball, though that is remarkable, but because of who you are as a person, because the game is simply the canvas upon which the world will see what I have known since the day you were born." It was in that moment that Caitlin began to realize that this conversation was not merely about basketball. It was about her identity, her worth, and her purpose. And though she could not yet grasp the full significance, this exchange would later become the cornerstone of her inner strength, a foundation she would return to countless times during her career when the weight of expectation felt unbearable. But Anne was not finished, for she had been carrying a secret for years, waiting for the right moment to share it. And with the grandfather clock ticking steadily in the hallway and the fading light casting the